Alright, we are looking at the DseConfig file. Excuse the blue fonts. But you will see that this is the DseConfig file that's stored in resources. And when you look at this DseConfig file, there are a few authentication and authorization parameters you have to set up. So let's look for authentication, and there's an authentication section that's in the file with help data. The changes in here have been made towards the bottom of the file, and so let's go ahead and look at that. Yep, here they are. So authentication options, enabled is true, so yes, we're going to enable it. Default scheme will be internal, so we look internally first to authenticate this user. If that fails, another scheme has been implemented, and that's LDAP. And so then we'll go ahead and connect with LDAP to understand what to do with this user. Now, we also have role management, where role management is done in LDAP. So users to groups, management, mapping, etc. will be there. And then authorization has been implemented where it's enabled, and for the purposes of the demo, the other parameters have been set to false. So given this configuration and one more config that needs to be made, and that's in the Cassandra YAML, but this configuration right now will instruct DSE to go authenticate against LDAP. But hang on a second, if you're going to do that, you do need to understand, you need to give the LDAP admin user that will be used to verify and search for users that are logging in and group memberships, etc. So let's go ahead and find those options in the file as well. Alright, here's the LDAP options within the file. We identify which host that we're going to connect to. Then we go ahead and of course define the port. In this case it's the default 389 port. The next thing that you see is the DN of the user that can be used to go ahead and search LDAP for users and groups. And then what's the password? And then as we come in, whether we're using SSL, TLS, and now comes the interesting part, which is when we do searches for users, where do we start? So we start with people, Hogwarts, example DC.org, as we saw previously. The property that we're going to use in the records that we find under people is the CN property to match with the username that will be used with SQL when we use SQL. All right. Similarly, when we are searching for group memberships, we're configuring that we need to look for the member of a group, and that starts with getting all the groups under groups, Hogwarts, DC.org, and the parameter that we're going to use within each group object is the unique member parameter, which if it lists our user, then of course that's the association that is being made. And that is it for this demo. So now we should go see it in action. Oh no, not yet. There is one more file, and that's the Cassandra YAML file that needs to be modified specifically to use the DSE authentication and authorization components. So the authenticator is DSE authenticator, authorizer is the DSE authorizer, and then one more element that needs to be configured is the role manager, with the DSE role manager being used. Once that's done, then you've got the config complete and you're ready to test it out. That's going to be in the next video.